vanity. All right? And what he's talking about is when I was out of God's will, this is the way I looked at life. So keep this in mind, that everything we've studied so far has been from the perspective. How would you write a book before you got saved? How would you explain things in life? You don't know the Lord. Or let's say you know the Lord and you're kind of in Solomon's situation here. You didn't care what God's purpose for your life was. You just made your own decisions. You did what you want to do. Would your book be a little different than it is now? Okay. Keep that in mind. That's what we're looking at. Solomon wrote a lot of this stuff, but he is describing the way he looked at life in the days of his vanity, in the days before he was in the will of God. All right, so he says, in the days of my vanity, there is a just man, and this is what he didn't understand. There's a just man that perisheth in his righteousness. And there's a wicked man that prolongeth his life in wickedness. Being out of God's will skew your vision of life. And there's not a person in here that's not experienced that. One of the marks of maturity is the ability to look at life in perspective and not lose your emotional balance. And here's what happens to us. We wake up on Monday. Everything's going well. Bills are paid. Family's healthy. You're in good shape. You wake up Tuesday morning to find out that your granddaughter was in a terrific wreck in Atlanta, tore her car up, and she's in the hospital. Yesterday, that didn't happen. Tuesday, that happened. And that's the way life. Would you agree that life has high tides and low tides? All right. Now, what is maturity? Maturity is the ability to understand it's not always high tide. It's also not always low tide. It's not always, oh, wow, this is wonderful, this is great, because there are going to be days when you're going to get that phone call, when you're going to get that piece of information, or when it happens to you, you know. And so that's what maturity is the ability to balance these high tide and low tide situations in life, and life just simply changes daily. We go from blessing to blow up. And it can happen. How quickly can it happen? Instantly. Just absolutely instantly. I found out this morning that one of the ladies up here at CPM just paid her car off. Just got it paid off. Everything just seemed to be going well. Boom, she rear-ended somebody up there a half a mile from the center and tore her car all to pieces. 10 seconds before that happened, she was, everything was, and boom. And so one preacher said wisely at one time that we have to learn to cooperate with the inevitable. Stuff's going to happen. Just don't get bent out of shape when you rear end somebody or somebody rear ends you. Now, verse 15 says, when I was in the days before I was living in God's will, here's what really bothered me. These were some problems that I just didn't know how to balance. I mean, I was just really upset. Here's a righteous man, and he dies in his righteousness. He dies, and then here's this, and dying young was the implication. And then here's a guy, he's just as wicked as he can be, and he lives to be 90, 100 years old. So I don't understand that. And so what we're looking at tonight, yes, there are two facts that we need to notice. God did promise blessing to Israel if they obeyed his law, right? He did that. But he has not given these same promises to us under the new covenant. Now, Francis Bacon wrote one of the most dynamic statements I think that I've ever read concerning this particular issue. Francis Bacon said this, quote, prosperity is the blessing of the Old Testament. Adversity is the blessing of the New Testament. And when I read that, I was like, what did Jesus himself say? Expect what? Expect it. It's coming. As a matter of fact, how do you know? One of the signs that you're living in the will of God is what? Tribulation, exactly. And so, verse 15 just kind of unravels this thing. Yes, when adversity hits your life, apparently that is one of the signs that you're living in God's will, because it's just the world hates what we're doing, hates what we believe, hates who we are. There's no question about that. Now, the second thing, that's thing number one. God did not promise us blessing in the New Testament for our obedience and long life and health. He didn't promise that to us. He did promise if those that live godly in Christ Jesus live a long time? No, those that live godly will suffer persecution. Number two, the wicked only appear to prosper if you look at the short view of this thing. Now, that short view might be 90 years, you know. Here you got George Soros. That's a wicked man. How old is George Soros? 500 years old. He looks it. He does look it. I know he's in his 90s, right? And no, what? He's Hefner. He was as wicked and vile. He was an animal in his habits. But Asaph wrote about this in Psalm 73. He said, I didn't understand this. He said, I saw wicked people making money, building businesses. They had the respect of the community, and it seemed like they were never going to die. So I didn't understand until I went in to the tabernacle of the Lord, then understood I therein. Now I understand because I saw from a completely different perspective. And Paul, as a matter of fact, reiterates this in Romans 8:18 and 2 Corinthians 4:16 through 18. The only reward that an ungodly person will ever get is in this miserable life. I've heard people say, well, you know, the only hell that I will ever experience is here on this earth. No, this is the best. If you're lost and you die, this is the best life we'll ever get right here. And so, you know, these people, they've gained the world, but they're going to lose their souls. And so that's the second perspective. Yes, sir.
I know a particular individual, and he did a lot of crazy things before he was 40. And he's a few months older than I am. He's still alive. I'm thinking, he thought, I'll be dead when I'm 40. But the Lord didn't allow that.
Didn't work out.
Now,
It didn't work out.
I live in a consequence.
Paying the price. Yeah. Yeah, and it does. It comes back to bite you. It does, physically and in every other way. All right, now, look at verses 16 and 17 seem to be oddities, all right? Now listen to this. Be not righteous over much. Neither make thyself over wise. Why shouldest thou destroy thyself? Be not overmuch wicked, neither be thou foolish. Why shouldest thou die before thy time? Now what that sounds like, that's an odd statement. It's almost like saying, okay, you know, you can be too good. Don't be too good. Don't be too wise. But that's not the bottom line here. He's saying, don't be self-righteous. That's that phrase, over-righteous, over-much. Have you ever met people who just thought they were the most godly thing that ever walked the earth, and that they were the standard of measure, the standard of righteousness, the standard of how you should live your life? He's not talking about true righteousness here. He's not saying, you can just be too godly. What he's saying is you can appear to be fake godly. He said, don't do that. Don't put yourself out there as the measure and the standard that everybody has to live by. And so it's a warning. Don't be self-righteous. Don't do that. Pardon? Exactly. Exactly. What did Jesus say about the praying and the lifestyle of the Pharisees and the scribes? Yeah, he said they look great on the surface. You can see them praying out on the street corners, and they give their money publicly. He said, but he said on the inside, these guys are like coffins that are beautifully decorated, but inside they're dead bones. And so you can be that, and Solomon is warning us, don't be that. Also, this matter of being overwise. Don't think you know it all. Don't think that, I'm around guys that every subject that comes up, they have the right answer for it. Oh, well, let me explain that to you, And there's nothing wrong on occasion to saying, I don't know. I don't have a clue. People ask me questions pretty regularly. I'm like, I don't have a clue. I don't know. And so it's okay not to know everything. Don't act like you know everything. Don't act like you're righteous when this righteousness is self-manufactured. That's what he's talking about here. And so wisdom is more powerful than weapons when it's used properly. So now let's go back and read verse 16 again. Don't be righteous over much. Don't fake it. Neither make yourself over wise. Why should you destroy yourself? So what is the end of a person that has manufactured his own righteousness and has manufactured his own wisdom? What's the end result of that? You're going to destroy yourself. All right? Verse 17. Be not overmuch wicked. Now we've got the other side of this coin. Neither be thou foolish. Why should you die before the time? Well, what's he saying there? People are wicked, right? That's the nature of man. And his statement is this: don't multiply what you are. I would tell the mass murderers and those people that are just excessively wicked. That's just, being wicked is bad enough, right? But take it to that degree. This guy that shot these Asian women up in Atlanta, he had a sex addiction. And his statement was, the way he explained this, he wasn't necessarily just killing Asian women. He was killing women. And he said, I'm trying to get rid of the thing that is the object of my temptation. So he's killing women because that was his temptation. And so having a sexual temptation is one thing. Killing 8 women to try to stop the temptation, would you agree that's something else? I seriously doubt that there's a man in this building tonight or listening and watching that has not been sexually tempted. I also know there's not a man in this building tonight that has killed people over that issue. And so it's a completely different issue here. So he says, don't be overmuch wicked, because that's foolishness. It's foolish enough to be wicked. But when you multiply that by what we see in the world, that's when it's going to kill you. All right, verse number 18. Now, here's another problem that we've got. It is good that thou shouldest take hold of this. This what? This principle of don't be self-righteous. Don't be falsely wise. Don't think you know everything. Yea, also from this withdraw not thine hand, for he that feareth God shall come forth of them all. In other words, you will escape the extreme punishment of people that are like this. You want to escape this kind of stuff? Then don't be self-righteous. Don't act like you know everything. Don't let your wickedness just become rampant. Don't do that. Because when you do that, you are opening yourself up to some severe judgment and punishment. Again, the guy that thinks wickedness, that's wrong. But the guy that plays that out in his life, see, you can't go to jail for thinking the wrong thing. You can go to jail for doing the wrong thing. So we're talking about two completely different issues here. And so it's good that I keep in mind my righteousness, which means perfect conformity to a perfect standard. None of us are that. Why are we righteous tonight? I'm in Christ, and guess who He is? He's righteous. And so because I'm in Christ, boom, I am automatically as perfect as He is in God's sight. That wasn't me. That wasn't you. We didn't come to church enough to finally be declared righteous. You know, we didn't give enough money to finally be declared righteous. We didn't talk to enough people about Jesus to finally be declared righteous. We were hidden in Christ, in God. That was our righteousness, and so I need to keep that in mind now. Verse 19, wisdom strengtheneth the wise more than 10 mighty, and the word mighty is the word generals. So you've got 10 generals in a city. These guys are military geniuses. They are war veterans. They know how to win a battle. What would be better, wisdom or weapons? Wisdom. Wisdom can stop a war. Wisdom can do that. Every war that has been fought, what if England had exercised wisdom toward the colonies in the days before there would have been no war. If they had just listened to us. But they didn't. How about World War I? Wisdom would have prevented that. How about World War II? Wisdom would have prevented that. I think Korea that was a police action, wasn't it? It wasn't a war. Yeah, and it has never been declared ceased. So it's still an active, open police action, even though nothing's going on. I'm telling you, every conflict that this country or any other country has ever had could have been prevented by wisdom. But that's how little people depend on wisdom, at least on the world scene. And so, anyway, the tides of life can be, we can't do anything to balance it. We can't do anything to stop the high tide or the low tide. What can we do? We can exercise wisdom so that we don't blow up when either one of these things happens in our lives. All right, now look at verse number 20. Now he's going to answer back in verse number 16. Well, is he saying that, we shouldn't be too righteous now? No, it's not what he's saying. He's saying don't be self-righteous. Because look at verse 20. For there's not a just man on earth that doeth good and sinneth not. See, that guy doesn't exist. So he's not saying don't be too much of, this righteousness stuff, because there's not a just man on earth. Now, again, keep in mind, he was looking at life when he was out of God's will. This was in the days of his vanity. And so you're gonna see some things that you won't see later in his life, because he's going to have some wisdom later that he doesn't exercise early in his life. And I think we probably all have experienced that. We've all done things early in life as teenagers. Even if you were a Christian teenager, how many of us Christian teenagers, you did something that was just absolutely stupid? We've all done that. Would you do it today? I wouldn't even think about doing some of that stuff today. Absolutely not. All right. Now, there's another battle. Verse 21. Also, take no heed unto all the words that are spoken, lest thou hear thy servant curse thee. Here's another battle. Don't worry about what people say about you. Does that ever bother you? Did you hear what they said about you or somebody else? And the people that are really weak in faith, gossip really hurts them. The weaker I am in my faith, the more gossip about me is going to hurt me. Right? Yep, they do. And people get killed over that kind of stuff every day. And so we have more important things in life to do than to worry about what people say. I'm sure I've been criticized for many, many things through the course of my ministry. And most of it I haven't heard. And there have been times when it just bothered me because nobody wants to be talked about, right? But I've discovered that sometimes people are wrong in their assessment of you. And it's just somebody's opinion. That's all. It's an opinion. And so through every word of criticism or complaint launched against us, you don't have to respond to everything. Somebody asks you, well, what do you think about what they said? I have a pat answer for that. And my pat answer is this. There are days I won't even think about that. I don't care what they said. And I'm to the point in my ministry now that I don't care what people say. Now, here's the thing I've got to be careful about. They might be right. But can you imagine somebody that criticizes you being right? So I need to make sure that I don't give them grounds for a proper criticism. You know what I'm saying? And if they are right and I am indeed in the wrong, what should be my response to that? Thank you for telling me that. Yeah, I appreciate that. All right, I need to work on that. And so verse number 21, don't let people that are talking about you, don't let that bother you. Verse 22 tells why. For oftentimes also thine own heart knoweth that thyself likewise have cursed out. We've done the same thing. Well, now when I say it, it's true. Well, that's what they think. It's exactly what other people think. So what I need to keep in mind is, I've talked about people just like they've talked about people. So I need to keep this in mind, that my talking about them needs to be as unheeded as they're talking about me. All right? Now, there's another problem, beginning of verse number 23. All this have I proved by wisdom. I said, you see the word will is actually tried. So let's read it that way. I tried to be wise. I gave this a good shot. I remember the time when I was out of God's will, I was really trying to be all this wise, and it was far from me. That which is far off and exceeding deep, who can find out? Now here's the third problem. Our ability to understand what God does in this world. Jamie, don't you wish you had a problem or the answer for everything?
We talked about that Sunday. God's thoughts are higher than our thoughts. His ways are higher than our ways.
8 people get killed in Atlanta. Could God have stopped that? He could have stricken the guy down with a stroke. He could have. There are things I don't have answers to, folks. And if you're honest, you don't either. And so as a Christian, I've had people that were non-Christians just sort of say, oh, okay, well, then you answer this. And to be honest with you, there have been times when I said, I can't. Exactly. That's a pretty good way to put it, John. You're exactly right. And so, sometimes I just simply fail to see God's hand in something. I don't know what he's doing. I can't see behind the shower curtain. I know that he is active, and I know he's doing things. Look at chapter 3, verse number 11. He hath made everything beautiful or appropriate in his time. Also, he hath set the world and that word is eternity, in their heart, so that no man can find out the work that God maketh from the beginning to the end. Nobody's wise enough to do that. I don't even need to try to act like a know-it-all, to be able to explain every little detail about what God does in this world. I don't know what God does in this world all the way. Now look in chapter 8 and verse number 17. 8:17. Then I beheld all the work of God, that a man cannot find out the work that is done under the sun. I don't understand everything. God's doing stuff that I'm completely unaware of. He owes me no explanation. He owes you no explanation. There are times when I just have to sit silent in my own ignorance and say, man, I don't have a clue. And if you're honest, and I think you people are, you have to say the same thing. But don't you feel obligated as a Christian, especially a mature Christian, to have an answer for everything? Well, kind of like Barney. Well, Ange, here's why that happened. I don't know why that happened. Nobody does, all right? All right, now, look at verse 25. I applied mine heart to know and to search and to seek out wisdom. And the reason, and the word reason there means right estimation, the proper estimation of things. And the reason of things, and to know the wickedness of folly, even of foolishness and madness. So what was one of the things that Solomon set out to find out about? What's going on in this world? Why does the godly man gets killed early, the ungodly man lives a full life, he's got all kind of money and kids? I don't understand that. I just can't figure out what God is doing, and we're not supposed to be able to figure out what God's doing because we're not God. Now he's about to get into something that is going to appear to be a little sensitive, especially to the ladies, all right? But hold on, all right? I'm going to try to walk us and navigate us through this right here, all right? I find more bitter than death the woman whose heart is snares and nets. Now, here's the final problem. It's just the general wickedness of people. I'm sure you've heard it, and I've heard it for years, that, there's a spark of goodness in everybody, and we just need to fan that little spark, and it'll blaze up into a flame. No, it won't. There is no spark of goodness in a human being pre-salvation. And the only thing good about us after salvation is the Holy Spirit who indwells us. Now, verse number 26 is referencing an idolatrous, adulterous woman. He is not denigrating females in general. Ladies, understand this. How many times does Solomon use the woman as a picture of wisdom? I mean, as a matter of fact, he says wisdom, she, her. And how many times does he say stuff like, how a God, Proverbs 31. He just lays out, and so this is not a denigration against the female gender. And so he's talking about that woman whose heart knows no fences, no boundaries. She will do anything for anything. And I find more bitter than death the woman whose heart is snares and nets, and her hands is bands or handcuffs, whoso pleaseth God shall escape from her, but the sinner shall be taken by her. Who's writing this? How many wives does man have?
300, 700 concubines.
Okay. How many women is that total? No, specifically 1,000. Keep that in mind here. Behold, this have I found, saith the preacher, counting one by one, to find out the account which yet my soul seeketh, but I find not one man among 1,000. There's not one guy in 1,000. I mean, there's your ratio. And now keep this in mind. Women in this time did not have the same opportunities as men did. They didn't have the same position. They didn't have the same educational opportunities. They had none of that. None of that. The men were the leaders, the rulers. It was considered a curse to have a woman leader. All right? So keep in mind that he's not denigrating the female gender, but this particular kind of woman, which, by the way, he had an awful lot of experience with. All right? So he knows what he's talking about here. Now, I couldn't find one guy among 1,000. Have I found? I found, but a woman among all those have I not found. Not among 1,000. Now, how many wives did he have? And side squeezes? 700. That's 1,000. One by one. Do you think it is possible that Solomon, one by one, I tried to find one of these women that had a heart for God. I tried to find one that was just the embodiment of beauty and wisdom and godliness. None of them. None of them. This man was speaking from experience. And this is just a general principle. The wickedness of the human race is just, oh my goodness, it's legion. This is, it's my goodness, it's world famous. Wickedness is world famous. And it's because of what we are by nature. And so he says, I found one guy among 1,000. And then I started counting up and talking and interviewing all these. I didn't even find one among women. The women he knew. Okay? Keep that in mind too. Lo, this only have I found, that God hath made man upright. I think he's talking about Adam here. How did God create Adam? Without sin. He was upright. Look what he did. He's found out and sought out many inventions. In other words, he fell. And when he fell, he found out many ways to express his wickedness. And that's what he's talking about earlier. Don't be over wicked over much. Don't look for ways to enhance and to, express and expand. We're wicked enough. Don't look for ways to magnify that. So don't do that. So this is, again, if we go back, I think verse 15 is really key. You look through this window and you see Solomon saying, when I was out of God's will, this is how I looked at life. This was my view of things. And as he gets a little older toward the rest of the book, he's going to make one of the most phenomenal statements I think that you'll find anywhere in the Bible. He said, let's hear the conclusion of the whole matter. He's wrapping the book up, and after walking us through and navigating us through the swamps and the sewers and all of this kind of stuff, toward the end of the book, he's going to say, let's hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear God, keep his commandments. That is the whole duty of man. So Solomon finally found the wisdom that he was looking for. And it wasn't in his wealth. It wasn't in his women. It wasn't in his wisdom. It wasn't in any of those things. It was just simply in, Lord, how do you want me to live my life? I will do the thing that you have designed me to do. Just tell me what you want me to do. And but when we go through and we read this, it's kind of shocking, really, to read some of the statements and to see, well, why would he say that? Because he was out of God's will when he said it, or when he believed that. And he's now just writing about the way it was many, many years ago. And so have y'all found, and this is a ridiculous question, I think, have y'all found this to be exactly the way life is? It's right on the money. It's right on the money. It is. And it always has and it always will until Jesus comes back. People say stuff like, I don't know why everything I do it's horrible. I fail. It blows up. Decisions create events. Decisions create events. Good decisions create good events. Bad decisions create bad events. It's really pretty simple. But, the human species does not see that, doesn't understand. It's always whose fault. When something fails, it's somebody. It's not mine. It's my third grade teacher. My mom, my dad, my husband, my wife, my kids. It's somebody's fault. But it's just like the Jews. You remember, they were like, this guy's brought us out. I remember when we were living in Egypt, man, we had it made. Y'all remember the salad bars? The leeks and the garlic and the onion. Oh, man, it was just this life of leisure. And then this guy comes along. Well, let's just go back. Can we just go back? Let's go back to Egypt. So here's what we need to elect a leader. All right. The floor is open for nominations. Who wants to be the leader to take? Why were they electing a leader? Because they wanted somebody to blame it on when it blew up. And it was going to. And then they were going to say, yeah, man, we were slaves and, now we were headed to the promise. And this guy takes us back. People are just never satisfied because they make, these decisions. And can you stop making dumb decisions? Yes. That's what life is. It's the opportunity to stop doing the wrong thing and start doing the right thing. And we deal with people every day that are living in the consequences of decisions that they made. By the way, so are we. We're living in the consequences of the decisions that we've made. And we are tonight where our decisions have taken us. And we will be tomorrow where our decisions take us. And we were listening to a blog or whatever it was today, and this preacher made a statement that, and you've heard this before, your dominant thought is the flow of your life. That's where you're headed. Your dominant thoughts are taking you. So whatever the dominant thought is in the heart, that's the direction that we're all going in. And so I appreciate Solomon. Well, this is the Lord, inspired the book. I'm aware of that. But I'm glad that the Lord brought Solomon to the place where he was honest enough to say, I was a jerk. This is the way I looked at life. This is the way I saw it. Then I got in God's will, and you know what I discovered? The whole purpose of life is fear God and keep his command. It was there the whole time. It's like a person that travels 50,000 miles in search of treasure, only to come home and find a buried gold mine in the backyard. This is what the book is. Yes, sir.
I'm wondering how to compare the wisdom God gave Solomon, and he asked for it, with the wisdom that Solomon gained. And there's a difference. Wisdom God gave. He gave it, he hadn't earned it. But in his life, the wisdom, he earned that.
Yeah. That was experience, right? He had learned from a pretty hard experience. Good question. Good question. I find that the church in general is drifting off of a biblical foundation of wisdom. And I'm seeing churches that used to be torchbearers, denominations that used to be thoroughly torchbearers, now drifting off a biblical foundation and embracing things that they used to preach against. But now they're embracing them to be culturally relevant. And I think I can speak for your heart. Are you really concerned about this church being culturally relevant? Or are you more interested in us being biblically relevant? I think if we remain biblically relevant, that keeps us culturally relevant, to be honest with you. So let's continue to do that. And when you get into conversations with people in a community about issues, topics, hot topics, like this, the LGBT thing, abortion, whatever it is, we don't need to be rude and abrasive, but you need to be stout. You just need to be strong. You say, well, people are going to talk about you. What did Solomon say about this? Don't worry about it, If you tell the truth, if you speak truth in love, you don't worry about where it lands. You just don't do that. God will take care of that. The Lord He will defend you. More than 10 generals in a city. So I'm grateful for that. Yes, sir.
The guy that went Supreme Court and got the baker that went Supreme Court and won the case. Now there's a transgender lawyer that sued him because he wouldn't make a case. Somebody was coming out Now, text Charlie Thornton this morning. I'm checking up on him. Little Ruby, off ventilator, like 2.3 pounds.
Yeah, she's a little bitty thing.
3 pounds. Whatever. He's doing good.
On the positive side of things. Very good. All right. Y'all ready to go home? Yes, sir. I'm sorry. Oh, no, we didn't. We did not. Let's go ahead and do this. We're talking about